to kick off. So thank you for joining us today, during all of the talks so far. We're going to be talking about what it takes to enable and nurture enterprise AI across an organization. If you've got any questions, please do use the chat functionality. We'll try and save a little bit of time for Q&A at the end, but if not, we're happy to address anything after the event as well. And if you want to maximize the presentation, just double click the video so you're not focusing on my face, which would be a benefit for everyone, I think. And before we crack into the crux of the presentation, just a little introduction into ourselves and into Woodhurst Consulting. So I'm Josh Ricks. I'm co-founder and director of Woodhurst Consulting, and we've got Lydia Coyle on the line as well. She's one of our management consultants. And Woodhurst is a digital transformation consultancy. So we help firms to enhance and improve their digital capabilities, and we focus primarily on financial services. So that could be supporting a cloud migration project. It could be helping the bank to implement new functionality within its mobile app, or it could be helping them to run small experiments with AI or machine learning or running a proof of concept. Today, we're talking about a little bit more than just an experiment or a proof of concept with AI. We're talking about this idea of enterprise AI, which is when any individual, any team, any function within the organization has the skills, knowledge, and resources that they need to maximize the value of artificial intelligence and to really drive a competitive advantage for the organization. It's a little bit of a nirvana state, and we really appreciate that, because there's only really few large organizations that can really say that they've achieved this state of driving a competitive advantage through AI. The likes of Google, Microsoft, Amazon, the ones who are actually building a lot of the solutions in the market today. But it's really useful to consider this nirvana state, because it gets you thinking about those individual steps and those individual actions that you as an organization can take, or you can take to your clients, to try and make sure that they slowly but surely start maximizing the value of AI. And that's what this presentation is all about. If we present this nirvana view, we can drill down on some specific actions. And when we look at enterprise AI, we've broken the environment that enables an organization to achieve enterprise AI, to sort of enable and nurture AI, into two parts. Firstly, you've got 5 foundational layers across the organization that you can work on to maximize your chance of success when running AI projects. And there's also a framework, a repeatable, consistent, standardized framework for running AI projects, which again will slowly but surely help you get to a point where you're maximizing the success of AI, so that over time it can start to be a competitive advantage for the firm. And we're going to use these foundations, this framework, and apply a couple of use cases from within the market where firms have been successful at implementing AI solutions, just to bring them to life a little bit.
Yeah, so like Josh just said, we're going to bring AI to life a little bit and run through some real examples of where AI is being used in the financial service industry today. So 3 use cases where AI is being used really successfully is in identity verification as a virtual financial assistant and in preventing fraudulent claims. So firstly, if we look at AI-powered identity verification and Jumio's offering. So Jumio is an AI-powered identity service provider. By using a combination of government-issued IDs, AI, and face biometrics, they're able to confirm someone is who they say they are online. With an approach that is as simple as taking a selfie, they can confirm someone's identity, they can streamline the onboarding experience while still ensuring that regulatory compliance is met. So this use case is particularly interesting because it really helps you understand how the extent to which an AI solution is implemented really alters the overall outcome and success. So they've partnered with both HSBC and Monzo, but in really different ways and with really different results and outcomes. So firstly, if we look at the partnership between Monzo and Jumio, Monzo made Jumio's service offering a really key and integral part of their offering. They worked together since day one to create this easy-to-use, intuitive mobile onboarding experience that really became one of Monzo's key customer selling points and really cemented their customer-centric model. Jumio also really helped Monzo meet really strict KYC and AML standards, whilst minimizing the need for manual review. If we now compare this with HSBC, They've used Jumeo's service to allow documents to be uploaded and verified digitally online. Whilst this is really good strides in starting to use part of AI solutions, they've only deployed one part of Jumeo's offering and not really made it a key integral part of their business. Hence, the results experienced are nowhere near as positive or to the scale of what Monzo achieved, showing the value of AI really comes from the way you incorporate it within your business. The second use case we're going to look at is Erica, which is Bank of America's virtual financial assistant or chatbot. So this use case is of interest because chatbots are something that have been around for quite a few years now, with varying levels of sophistication, features, and success. But one that has really outperformed all the others and is a market leader is Bank of America's Erica. This is because it goes beyond the standard chatbot features of simply responding to queries, and it also provides intelligent customer insights and money management expertise. The AI-powered chatbot can analyze users' spending habits and give personalized investment and payment solutions based on their data, helping people make more sound, better decisions and manage their money better. And Erica's actually seen a massive uptake during the coronavirus pandemic, with people now more than ever looking to manage their personal finances. And they've actually seen 1 million additional users each month from March through to May, bringing the overall user count to 14 million and really highlighting the trust that people have in this software. And the third and final use case that we're going to look at is where AI is being used to prevent fraudulent claims in the insurance industry. So one of the largest insurers in Turkey had a challenge with detecting fraud in their claims department. The process that they were following to check if a claim was fraudulent was really, really manual. It was done by a team of about 50 people based on a really minor set of business rules. The process took about 15 days, and they were experiencing about 30,000 claims per month and rising, really highlighting to them that this process just wasn't sustainable. So after implementing AI software from Friss, the process was completely transformed to an automated system in a single platform that enabled them to gauge the fraud risk in real time. So like I said, the manual way of doing it prior took around 15 days. And with this automated detection system, they could get a scoring in real time, which could be followed up by an immediate investigation. They had great results with around 210 return on investment within 1 year of using the software, and cost savings of over 5 million. So these are just 3 use cases where AI has been used and implemented really well and given great value to both the company and the customer. So if we now look at the 5 foundations of enterprise AI that Josh touched on earlier and relate them back to these use cases, we can really begin to understand why they were successful and why having those 5 foundational principles in place is really key.
So understandably, data is the first foundational layer that we talk about. It's the lifeblood of artificial intelligence solutions, and it really helps to fuel AI as a technology on the whole. The key aspects that an organization needs to look at to get towards this state of enterprise AI are making sure that your data is complete, it's accurate, it's plentiful, and quite importantly, that you can sort of move it across the organization or move it across regions within data regulations, so that you can actually build solutions from that data. And then when you've built a model, you can input that data into the model and generate the output that you're desiring. And the insurance use case is really brilliant for looking at this. So they were using a third-party existing model for identifying fraud, but they actually pumped through 3 years of fraud case data into that existing algorithm to help improve that model, to help identify new business rules on top of the existing ones, and to generate an output that was much more specific to the use cases that they were looking into. So in order to do that, they had to be really, really confident in the accuracy, the completeness, the validity of the data that they were handling, and they needed to be really confident that it was almost error-free, or that when they were performing the data analysis exercise, they'd be able to identify the errors that they needed to and push it through this model in order to generate this much more successful output that they're striving for. So that's an example of where an organization has a really, really positive, strong data landscape, data environment on which to build AI tools and technologies. Look at an alternative example with a client that we worked with, where we were building out a predictive analysis tool to help people with budgeting within the retail bank. We had to identify when an upcoming direct debit was going to be paid, because that's a key aspect of money coming out of your budgets. But nowhere within the bank, nowhere within the core banking systems, nowhere within any data tables actually captured that information in the way that we wanted it to. So we didn't have any confidence in the accuracy or the completeness of the data that was being handled there. So the AI tool is not as effective as it could be. So you've got a real contrast there between an organization that's close to achieving this idea of enterprise AI as far as data is concerned, and one that isn't. And alongside data, the next sort of key foundational layer that we look at is the technology. And we break this down into two parts. Firstly, you've got the underlying infrastructure that is powering your AI tools and technology. And I'd be shocked if any of the use cases that we've outlined there weren't using cloud computing in order to develop the models on which their solutions are built. Cloud computing obviously is massively cost effective. It gives you that elastic, scalable computing power, readily available data storage. And also there's a lot of ready-made tools that the likes of Amazon, Microsoft, Google have made public and available for organizations to tap into just via a simple API. So the underlying infrastructure on which the tool is built is absolutely key. And it's not just about going, yeah, we're comfortable with cloud computing. It's about saying that the people in my organization are able to utilize the cloud in a way that allows them to build these models. So ensuring you've got the right development in pipelines, ensuring you've got the right mix of environments to take a tool from something very small and experiment all the way through to production. The second layer within technology is all about the architectural principles and the architectural approach that the organization takes to building these solutions. Look at Bank of America and the Erica tool. This single chat-based user interface interacts with the core banking system to show balances and transactions. It interacts with the payment systems in order to execute payments, and it interacts with any of the customer support functionality as well within the bank. So they've managed to integrate and package up this front-end tool with a number of different bits of functionality in the organization across disparate systems. So they've taken an approach to building that out, which they definitely had in mind when they started off in that journey, that allowed them to maximize value for the organization. And not only that, they're maximizing value within each of the different functions of the bank, which means that it's much easier to get a business case signed off and to gain traction with these AI tools and technology. So having a strong technology foundational layer is absolutely key to allowing the organization to thrive with AI.
Yeah, so the next foundation is culture. So success happens in organizations whose culture embraces innovation, promotes this experimental fail-fast mindset, and really harnesses the creative flair of its people. But it's really not easy to foster this environment. Financial targets don't tend to lend themselves to technology investments that might not see an immediate return, and the governance processes don't make it easy to operationalize projects or allow them to proceed at pace. The right culture that needs to be in place needs to ensure that people are not fearful of spending time, effort, and money on projects that might not work or might not see a return immediately. However, we need to be careful that we're not careless with innovation budgets. Also, it needs to ensure that financial targets appreciate that real impactful change requires a commitment of investment over time. And also the stigma around failure needs to be removed and instead replaced with an environment that encourages learning and allows you to trial new technologies. So these ideas, coupled with an investment to train the entire organization in capabilities like data science, cloud computing, and customer-driven value propositions, will give people the knowledge, tools, and environment to really allow AI projects to thrive. So the Monzo and Jumio use case that I described earlier really talks to this. The success that they had together in developing this world-class onboarding experience was down to the fact that Monzo fosters this innovation culture and a culture that really embraces AI software completely, putting it at the heart of their business. So the next foundation is people. So the organization can lay these foundations for a good culture, but it's the people that really bring it to life. So when we talk about specific people and capabilities needed for an AI project, we're meaning more than just the data scientists. Firms also need the machine learning software and cloud engineers in order to really build, support, and maintain the tools. Also, for an AI project to really thrive, the firms need a blend of engineering, delivery, and business skills. And these boundaries between data analytics and technology really need to be broken down. And the organization needs to work to develop these core capabilities everywhere across everyone. Firms need to also make sure that they're really ingraining this internal capability and expertise within the organization and moving away from this old school organizational structure and departments. To truly flourish and excel at AI implementation across the organization, the skills and capabilities need to be developed within and ideally right across the business. So the Bank of America chatbot Erica really illustrates this. So in order to build the chatbots, Bank of America pulled together a team of around 100 people from across the business to build the virtual chatbots. The vast majority of the team were permanent Bank of America staff from different teams with different capabilities. This allowed the expertise that was gained to be fully ingrained within the organization, and it also really helped with the technology being able to be integrated with the back-end systems. And lastly, if we move on to process, so too often than not, financial organizations are constrained by internal processes that aim to control how projects are executed, but more often than not, actually put blockers in the way of progress, particularly when new technologies are concerned. With the introduction of AI and other complementary technologies such as cloud computing and big data analytics, it's really important that governance, procurement, and legal processes are enablers rather than hindrances. To enable projects to proceed at pace, the organisation really needs to come together to find a way to streamline the vendor onboarding process. Their IT policies really need to be able to allow third-party solutions to be deployed internally or hosted externally and allowed to be securely connected to. And there must be controls around the way data is shared internally and externally. Each project should be able to rely on a robust data governance model. Where the processes internally aren't currently conducive to AI development, those who own or input into these processes really need to come together across the organization to initiate a change. So the insurance use case that again I described earlier is a really good example of having a solid process in place. They were really comfortable with implementing a third-party solution from a relatively unknown service provider, showing that they have the processes in place that are conducive to new technologies and they weren't putting any blockers in place. They were also able to implement the AI solution seamlessly into their core systems. Like Josh touched on earlier, they were also able to provide 3 years of historical claims data to allow the models to be built, showing again that they clearly had strong data management capabilities and governance models in place to allow this vast amount of sensitive information to be shared with a third-party source. And finally, the solution was live and fully operational after 6 months. It was delivered on time and on budget, showing they clearly had really strong agile release processes in place. So once these 5 foundations of enterprise AI have been put in place, the organization will be in a really good position and set up for success. So the next step then is to ensure that the correct framework is followed in order to then operationalize efficiently, which Josh will talk you through now.
Yeah, so alongside those 5 foundational layers, it's really, really important to consider how you can implement a consistent, repeatable, reliable, standardized framework that increases the chances of success. As we've seen time and time again through our market, only 10% of artificial intelligence and machine learning projects actually make it through to production. And the reason for that isn't necessarily that the tool isn't right to make it through to production. It's that the foundational layers aren't there and the project isn't being executed in a way that enables it to get through to production. So this 4-step process we've got on the screen looks fairly simplistic, but when you go across organizations or you even look within organizations, there's a huge amount of variability in the way that projects are actually executed. You will have teams within the same organization, the same banks in our experience, operating in completely different ways to try and get an AI tool into production. And that's not conducive to success. And I think any change management expert will attest to that. So this process is simplistic, but obviously there's nuance below it. It begins up front with analysis. That's vitally important to really understand what the business problem is, to drive out the business objectives to solve that problem, to build out the requirements and start designing the solution. And yeah, absolutely, at this stage, you can start even experimenting with the AI tool or the AI model or the data set that you think might be most impactful with that particular use case. And you start building out a business case to push this forward. And that's really, really important step, because it starts you thinking with the end in mind. When we talk about Bank of America use case earlier and integrating that tool across the business, the way that they did that wasn't by chance. It's because they spent the time up front designing a user interface that would integrate to all of the different areas of the business. You then move into this sort of preparation stage, and this is where the data scientists are getting their hands dirty with the data, doing the sort of data cleansing, data selection, feature engineering, identifying which model is going to be most successful for this particular problem type. And you're probably starting to build out the team a little bit here to gather a cross-functional team of engineers and data scientists and the business users as well to try and push this forward. When you move into development, and elements of that will be happening across the process, it looks linear, but it is agile in nature. Most organizations are fairly comfortable with the idea of iterating from the sort of experiment to proof of concept to pilot to MVP and pushing something out to users. But they often focus, when we look at AI projects across our clients, they're often focusing too much on building the model and not maybe the software engineering that needs to go into actually building the tool that enables the model, and the infrastructure engineering that needs to go into building the cloud environment and the pipelines and all of the good DevOps processes that sit around it. There's an awful lot of work there that often gets discounted. And then once you've got your tool, your solution, and it's ready to push out into production, you need to operationalize it. You need to make sure that you can support the tool, that you can support the model and make sure that the model's not drifting, make sure that the data's not drifting because someone else in the business has amended the input data without necessarily telling you, making sure that the output remains unbiased by putting alerts and monitoring on the outputs that are coming through, making sure that customers are supported and making sure that your support staff are au fait with the tool that you're pushing out there. And importantly, that the product is supported throughout its life and continually developed. So this isn't a difficult process to really comprehend, but there's so many different steps within it that often organizations fail to consider. And when you put this together with those foundational layers, you can start to think about those individual actions and those individual activities that you as an organization or your clients can really take forward to enhance their chances of success with AI. And it could be as simple as implementing this process. It could be a data remediation exercise. It could be looking at how you're using cloud and making sure that your staff are comfortable with the way that you operate these tools within a cloud-based environment. And it's about slowly but surely getting to this state where, as a large organization or as a small organization, you're really maximizing the value of AI. That's sort of it. We've got more material on this. We've released a white paper. We run AI readiness assessments. As we mentioned, we're happy to support with experiments, proof of concepts to drive forward the AI agenda. But if you've got any questions now, I very much doubt it because it looks like there's only 2 people watching this in addition to ourselves. But any questions, please feel free or get in touch after the event as well. But yeah, hopefully those that stuck around enjoyed what we had to say.